many soldiers are RUCs in prison for? They'll be told none.
On the 30th of December, Micheál and Fergal Carraher were driving through the village of Cullyhanna in mid-afternoon. They were coming from one pub, going to another pub. Quite a common thing around Christmas in Ireland. There was a British Army checkpoint, and they were waved through the checkpoint. They pulled in at the Light and Easy, which is their local pub, and in that car park they waited for some of their friends who were being held up in the checkpoint. Two British soldiers went over to Fergal and Micheál, and Fergal said to them, "Are we right? Can we go?" And the soldier said, "Away you go." So Fergal and Micheál drove on, got into the car and drove on, and two soldiers went down on their knees, opened fire and shot. Fergal was killed and Micheál was seriously wounded. There was a bullet 1/4 of an inch from his heart. There was 11 or 12 witnesses who saw everything. That day, in the radio and television, in the media, the British Army put out a statement saying that 2 brothers were shot as they broke a checkpoint. Local witnesses contradicted this. After the funeral, the Carraher said they won't rest until justice is done. The experience in shoot-to-kill cases has been, over the last 20 years, 345 or 350 people have been shot dead. There have been practically no satisfactory charges brought against any soldiers over the last 20 years for all of these cases. In the case where a soldier was charged, he got life imprisonment, he spent 2 years in jail and is now back serving in the British Army. So the Carrahers understandably had very little confidence in the justice system, and they called for an independent international inquiry. We told them it would be expensive, we told them it would be emotionally very, very difficult, and we said if at any stage they wanted to stop, they could. It was their decision. The family all got together with the local community and said, well, we want to go ahead. We won't rest until justice is done in this case. And I remember going to a meeting in the Cullyhanna Community Centre one beautiful Sunday evening, and there was 80 or 90 people at that meeting, and they unanimously voted that they would host an inquiry no matter how much it cost and no matter how much time it took. By June, we had Michael Mansfield, who's a QC from London, from England. He was QC for 5 of the Birmingham 6. We had 2 jurists from the International Federation of Human Rights from France and Germany, and we had 2 from the United States. Kevin Burke, who's a district attorney from Essex County, and Judge Summers from Wisconsin. They came to Cullyhanna, and over 2 days they heard witnesses, doctors' reports, all the different people just saying what they saw happened on the day. They also heard members of the families speak about how they had been treated before and after the killing of Fergal and the wounding of Micheál. The inquiry was really significant. 1, because it was a legal international inquiry, using international standards. But 2, and for me most importantly, because it was a local community getting together saying, this is it, we're not taking this anymore. Fergal is dead, we won't get Fergal back, but we're not going to allow this to happen to somebody else. They're not going to get away with this. They can't just shoot down our young people in cold blood and expect people to kind of say, sure, what can we do about it? And over those 2 days, people came from all over Ireland as observers, and from all over Europe, and from the United States. And they heard and saw for themselves what happened. After the 2 days, the jurists went back to their individual countries, and they wrote up individual reports from their own legal experience. And 6 months later, we launched the report and the findings of the inquiry. All the jurists found that there was enough evidence to convict the soldiers. A week after we launched the report and the findings, the British government charged 2 soldiers with the shooting of Fergal and Micheál. It was a significant case because we feel the only reason that they charged was because of the international pressure put on the British government. The credit has to go to the local Cullyhanna community who came together against all the odds, a small, rural, local community, and said, we're going to fight this. And they don't see that the case has ended now. What they want to make sure is that there are convictions, because they do feel that it was cold-blooded murder. And they also want to make sure that if there are convictions, that it doesn't happen like the other case where there has been a conviction and where after a year or two they're let out and, back into the British Army. Because that just makes a mockery of the justice here. I mean, on the one hand, you've had one soldier spending time in jail for all killings by the state, yet on the other hand, you've had more than 10,000 IRA and UVF spending time in jail. I mean, that's a total misadministration of justice.
For the better part of the last 10 years, Amnesty International has called on the government to have an inquiry, a judicial inquiry, into the whole system of investigating security force killings. We don't think it works. People don't get the information they want. People are unhappy about it. The burning questions are still there. Is there a shoot-to-kill policy? Why was my son killed? How did it come about?
On the month of February in 1990, my son, myself, and other members of my family, we went to a charity function outside Downpatrick. Everybody had a great evening. There was mixed company there, both Catholic and Protestant. On our way home, there was a bit of an argument on a small minibus, and there was a man who was hurt. And it turned out he was a provisional IRA man. My son was accused of that. I totally deny it. He didn't hurt him. He didn't touch him. That man grabbed a daughter of mine by the jumper, and he manhandled, well, he didn't manhandle her, he assaulted her. Somebody on that bus did assault the man. That I will never deny. I've told the story from the beginning, and it's the truth. But my son was accused of hitting the man. From the month of February until July, he was hounded like an animal. Between breaking the doors of his house down, going into the house with shotgun, hand revolver, baseball bats. This was all happened in front of a 4-year-old kid.
One of the problems when you're talking about human rights violations by the government and the government forces in Northern Ireland is the simple fact that the Loyalist forces and the Republican forces are killing people themselves. They've become a law unto themselves. They actually start to enforce just regular criminal activity in their communities. They torture people. There's the big issue of kneecapping, where they blow people's knees out. All of this is carried out by the IRA. There's the killing of informers. There's the killing of innocent civilians. It started off with killings just of military people, but now it's extended to people who are doing contract work, doing construction work, people who are repairing what a bomb blast has done, people who are cleaning on military installations. And a lot of that has enraged people. It's one thing to kill a soldier, that has a military tone to it. It's a completely other thing to blow up a busload of school children.
He walked in, he went into a bar and was approached by 3 men. The door was closed behind him. He was taken out through a back onto waste ground, and Anne-Marie and the child. And he was told to lie down. And he says he wasn't going to lie down. And he was told, lie down or we're going to nut you. And he still kept pleading. He was innocent, but they don't listen to that. Because to them, you're guilty. You don't have a trial with them. The first shot was fired, went into one leg. And whoever the man was pulled the trigger and the gun jammed. And it jammed a 3rd time round. And Paddy was left lying there. Anne-Marie run, and she got some people who got her help. Well, I come back anyway from the seaside and was met by other members of my family. And I was told that my son was shot, but I didn't know whether he was dead or alive or what. I didn't know. But I never felt so angry and so full of hate in all my born life, and I don't ever want to feel that way again.
And I think there's an element of frustration within Northern Ireland. People feel that, to use an expression that's used in Peru, that they're caught between two fires. And for an organization like Amnesty, it's a difficult position because human rights are the domain of governments. They're the ones who actually drafted what we refer to as human rights instruments. They're the ones who have court systems, they have security forces, they have the means and they have the obligation to enforce human rights. But increasingly what we're doing is looking at groups like the IRA, the various loyalist forces, and saying that there's another body of what we call humanitarian standards. And that applies to anybody. It doesn't just apply to governments, doesn't just apply to their forces. And under those standards, that there's never any justification for torturing people. There's never any justification for killing, deliberately and arbitrarily killing civilians or people who are outside of combat, so a soldier in hospital, for example.
So to the young ones, I would say, look, for God's sake, give it food for thought. Is torturing a human being, is that for the cause? Is that what you really and truthfully believe in? No, it's not. Nobody can do that. You couldn't do it. You ought to be an animal. Even an animal wouldn't do it, yeah.
But it's that kind of divide in the community where the score has to be settled all the time that fuels a lot of the violence that we see happening in Northern Ireland. But it's also fueled by the involvement of the security forces. When we talked about collaboration, about information about Republicans being given to loyalists and all that channeled through the security forces, that can only fuel that kind of sectarian violence. The government likes to say that it's just there to keep the peace, but it's actually not doing that.